What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Canadian Football Fantasy Fix. I'm Ryan Coop here, kicking off week number 14 of the 2021 CFL season with the quarterback preview for this week. I'll go through all the positions this week on Thursday, the depth charts for all the games on Friday to get you all set for setting your lineups for week number 14. Quick note, no Week 13 recap video this week. Much like the last week, it's been quite the hectic week here, and those ones take me a little bit longer to get prepared, and so I decided to forego that because I want to make sure to get the content out for this week, the previews for all of the positions to help you set your lineups. So no detailed recap of last week. I will probably touch on most of the players' performances as I go through them and talk about them for this week. So you still kind of get a recap. It's just integrated into everything else. My score on the week last week, 73.3 points. McLeod Bethel Thompson, disappointing at quarterback. Had a good pick in Kadeem Carey. DJ Foster did pretty well. Reggie White Jr. put me up at 12.4 as a value play. I was happy with that. I ended up putting Josh Huff in my lineup. I bid on the Calgary receiver in the matchup with Ottawa, and it didn't work out. Only 2.4 there. Curley Gittins Jr. with a 9.4. Not too bad. Not quite as value. And the Ticats defense being a bit of a disappointment with 4 points. So that was my week number 13. 73.3 points for me. Not my best week on the season. So I'll see if I can bounce back in week 14. I hope you crushed it. I hope you had a fantastic week. Both CFL Fantasy and all things in general. Hope it was a great week all the way around. And let's start taking a look ahead to week number 14 here. And starting off with the quarterback position. 4 games on the schedule. 2 Friday night, 2 Saturday. And here are the options we're looking at quarterback for this week. Couple of notable pieces from some of the teams with their quarterback situations this week. Trevor Harris will be starting at QB for the Montreal Alouettes. Matt Schultz kind of left the game with, I think it was an aggravated knee this past week, and it sounds like he won't even dress for this coming game. So Trevor Harris will be the starter for the Montreal Alouettes this week. For Edmonton, a lot of people expected Nick Arbuckle to get the start now that he has joined the team and is out of quarantine, but the Elks have said that Taylor Cornelius will be starting once again this week. So a couple notable pieces there on the quarterback front. But let's take a look at all of these options here. Let's go top down price wise and go red, yellow, or green light on them. So Cody Fajardo is the most expensive quarterback option this week at $11,644. That's a pretty hefty price. If you're paying that price, you need him to put up a lot of points. If you're looking to get what I kind of consider full value of 2.5 points per $1,000, because if you get that out of every dollar you spend, you hit 100 points, which is a pretty darn good score. You need 29.1 points out of Fajardo, and almost any week I would never recommend that, but especially as of late, he's been on a bit of a slide, so to say, with his fantasy performances. In his last 4 games, his highest total's been 16.7 points. Last week against Montreal, he put up 10.9, so he hasn't hit 29.1 a single time this year. He's had a couple games around the 25-26 range, but those were earlier in the season. I say stay away from Fajardo, especially since he's facing off against one of the top, I don't know if they're still number 1, pass defenses in the CFL and the Edmonton Elks, if you can believe it. So not a good matchup and a high total to hit. Stay away from Cody Fajardo. Generally, I don't recommend very many high-priced options when it comes to quarterbacks because a lot of times they're just not worth it. The only quarterbacks this year in starting time that have hit close to their value, have hit at least 2 points per $1,000, have been Nick Arbuckle, who's averaged 16.8 points a game, and 13.7 points for Taylor Cornelius. And actually David Watford in his 2 starts for Hamilton, given his current price, which is around $4,700, has hit the value there. So based on their current prices, the thing I'm trying to say here is most quarterbacks don't come close on average to hitting their value. Very few do. So you got to make sure to find the right one each and every week. And I like just spending less money. But where am I getting at with this? Jeremiah Mazzoli is probably, this week, probably the closest thing to a super high-priced quarterback that I would be willing to put in my lineup. I have him as a yellow light, kind of cautious, but I think a good pick. But I originally had him as a green light option this week. The only reason I say be cautious is because the price is so high at 27.9. Mazzoli, earlier this season, there were a lot of concerns over his play. He struggled greatly at the start of the season. You can see there his average in 6 games is 18 fantasy points on the year, which is actually highest amongst all of the quarterbacks available this week. And I think the quarterbacks in general with Calgary on the bye. But that average is kind of swayed by, early in the season, his first 2-3 starts, his highest total was 12.3 points. In his past 3 games, though, he's put up 24.7, 24.1, and 28.9. So it has been a fantastic couple of weeks. Ticats are rolling real nicely. And they have a good matchup with BC here, who are one of the worst pass defenses in the CFL. In their past 5 games, they've given up 3 totals over 20 points. So it should be a good day for Mazzoli. I think he can easily hit the 20-point mark this week. A little bit cautious about hitting the 27.9 because, again, that's a real tough total to hit. But, if Mazzoli can hit you a 24 or 25 and fall even just short of that, I think that's still a pretty good total to hit, and that definitely puts you on the right track for your fantasy week. So I like him as a potential option, just cautious on him hitting full value. A couple quarterbacks to stay away from here. Trevor Harris of the Alouettes, $10,567. Looked pretty good. I would say played some of his best ball of the year when he came into that game last week against the Riders for Montreal, but after Schultz left with his injury. But other than that, Harris has had a pretty down year, besides one game back in, I think, week 5 where he put up 33 points. His highest total other than that has been 14.7. So the salary is super high, and the matchup just isn't feasible against the Bombers. We saw what Winnipeg did to Trevor Harris last time around when he was with Edmonton, put up 4.4 points there. He does have a much better offensive line in Montreal, which maybe gives, hope for a better performance here for him. But quarterbacks don't put points up against Winnipeg. If you look at the averages there, the Bombers are averaging quarterbacks putting up 5 less fantasy points a game than the next best team here. So the matchup just isn't there, especially at the price for Trevor Harris this week. Michael Riley had a nice bounce back game for himself last week after a couple dismal ones in a row, putting up 22.1 points, so coming close to the full value at his $9,834 salary. Here I'm saying stay away from Riley, just mostly based on the matchup with the Ticats. I think the Ticats have a pretty good defense, and I'm a little bit skeptical on that one performance last week from the Lions after a couple bad ones in a row. So I want to see them bounce back strong here with another back-to-back performance, especially since they need a win here to keep themselves in the playoff race before I necessarily go back to Riley's direction, as some people did earlier this season. I'm also saying stay away from Zach Collaros of the Bombers, $9,531. 23.8 points is what you're looking for. He's averaged 16.3 on the season. Last game for him 2 weeks ago against BC, he put up 22.7, and then ended up getting pulled for Sean McGuire late in that game in a blowout. He's facing Montreal this week, which is one of the better defenses against quarterbacks this year, and that's part of the reason I don't like the pick this week. The other reason is that Winnipeg is in wait for playoffs mode now. They have clinched first place in the West Division. The last couple of games this year are essentially meaningless for the Bombers, so I don't know. It's hard to guess how much time Collaros is going to play. I am a bit skeptical of him playing the full game in this one. He could play, say, a half, 3 quarters. you don't know. So I think it's hard to bank on him hitting 24 points, which he has done only once this season, if he's not playing a full game. So I say stay away from Collaros in that regard. On the inverse of things, that may make some people tempted, I don't have him on the chart here, but to take Sean McGuire this week, $5,000 backup for the Bombers. Quite often gets in for a quick 1 yard plunge at the rushing touchdown. If he gets in late in the game, maybe put some extra fantasy points up on the board. I don't know if I would bank on that quite yet for the Bombers. I don't know if I'd bank on McGuire getting a half of football necessarily and be worth putting in your lineup. You could be disappointed if you try to take a backup quarterback this week. Another option I kind of like, I kind of don't, is McLeod Bethel Thompson, $9,490. You're looking for 23.7 out of him. He's got the favorable matchup, the matchup everybody loves, with the Ottawa Red Blacks, who give up on average 21.4 fantasy points to quarterbacks a game. I'm cautious on Bethel Thompson because I know he's capable of putting up big point totals. We saw him put up 22.7 against Hamilton a couple of weeks ago. First game of the year, he put up 24.6 against Calgary. But in his past couple of games, just 5.5 against Montreal and 9.7 against BC. I expected a much better total against the Lions and their struggling pass defense the past week, and it just didn't happen. Now, Toronto is one of those teams that's very good game, bad game, good game, bad game, so I think Bethel Thompson could step up nicely. But even then, go back to his matchup with Ottawa back in Week 10, put up just 13.3 points there. So I think there's the potential for a big game, especially with the matchup with the Red Blacks, but it's been a couple down weeks in a row. Only one time in his past 3 games has he hit over the 20. In his past 4 or 5 games has he put over the 20-point mark. So I'm cautious on Bethel Thompson. I think there's a play there, but I'm not 100% sold on that one. Talk about the 2 Ottawa quarterbacks, much the same as why I'm saying stay away from Zach Collaros, is who knows what the playing time share is going to be in this game for Caleb Evans and Devlin Hodges. Evans did end up playing the entire game last week and put up solid value at 7 and racking up 17.7 points against Calgary. Most of that coming on the ground with like a 68-yard rushing game, which is rare for a quarterback. But either of these quarterbacks, Ottawa's in play for next year mode. I can see them. I think they got to figure out yet what they're doing at the QB position. And so I could see Hodges playing part of this game, especially if the score gets out of hand a little early in this one. So I say stay away from either of these quarterbacks because I'm not sure they're hitting value for you if you only play half a game, so to say. And with Ottawa's struggling offense, I think I don't think it's guaranteed you're getting full value even at a cheap price. Either way, even if Evans does play the full game. The option I am giving the green light this week is Taylor Cornelius of the Edmonton Elks, largely due to the cheap price, as I talked about already. $5,982, 15 points, what you're striving for. 4 games this year, he's averaged 13.7, so he's been just there, just short. Has been Taylor Cornelius, and in his past, his first CFL start, he put up 6 points against the Bombers. That's a pretty standard total for teams to put up against Winnipeg. Came out with a strong 22.6 against Ottawa after that. Then put up 13.4 against Winnipeg and 12.6 against Hamilton. 2 teams that I would say have pretty solid defenses. So the Riders do have some strong defensive play themselves, but he's shown he can kind of hang with them enough at his price point to give you value here. You don't need a ton. 15 points, is a 200-yard passing game, 1 passing touchdown, and a couple and 30 yards on the ground. For example, there's different configurations, obviously. So I like Cornelius as an option because he's cheaper, lets you spend money elsewhere. And, even if he doesn't necessarily hit 15 on the head, a 12, 13-point performance like he's put up the past couple of weeks, you're only 3 points off track, and you've saved enough money that you could get a big play elsewhere and have more flexibility with your lineup to get guys that are going to put you up more than your values. So because the threshold is pretty low, there's the chance for him to over-exceed his necessary total. But even if he underwhelms, it should not hurt your totals on the week too terribly. So those are your fantasy quarterback options for this week. I like Cornelius as a cheap option. I also like potential plays of Jeremiah Mazzoli, McLeod, Bethel Thompson, and saying stay away from the rest of the field. Stay tuned later today. I'll have your running back, we just did quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and defensive previews out later today, throughout the day and the evening as well. And then stay tuned on Friday. I'll have 2 different depth chart updates. One for the first 2 games Friday night, one for the 2 games on Saturday. First one should come out in the morning. Second one should come out later that day to help get you all set for locking in your lineups for week number 14. Do all the YouTube things, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you liked, what you didn't. If you have any fantasy questions, put them in the comments section or tweet them at me at CooperTrooper42 on Twitter. Link to that's in the video description. And if you want to play CFL Fantasy alongside myself and other viewers, check out the link in the description to the Canadian Football Fantasy Fix group over on the official CFL Fantasy site. You can play alongside myself and other viewers this week and the rest of the 2021 CFL season. As always, thanks for watching. Take care. Have a good one. Bye.